Good evening. You're listening to the Xtreme Movie Show. Tonight's episode, Xtreme TV. I'm your host, Rob, here with Professor Pixel. We're covering Twin Peaks, Season 2, Episode 20. We're finishing up this wonderful ABC TV show that actually, to me, Pixel, all of a sudden I'm getting a sense of finality with this episode. I thought it was a decent, solid episode, especially considering the train wreck we've had for about the past 5 to 10 episodes, most of them. I feel like this is starting to feel like the original Twin Peaks and picking up towards a definite final end to Season 2. Initially, I'll sit there and say there's a few things I didn't care for it, but you know what? There were things I never cared about anyway, but there's a lot of things I liked in this episode, and I got to sit there and say it gave me the feels like Season 1 did and what a lot of Season 2 did not. What's your initial take on Season 2, Episode 20 of Twin Peaks?
Well, I'm going to start off and say that I think this was, in fact, a great episode. I know that we've been disagreeing with the past episode, but this one finally gets that push where, okay, now I can see that you'll like things, and I like it too, because I felt it's been a gradual change back to the original, and I just think it starts off right here. I guess diving right into the start of
Give
this
it to me.
Yeah, the start of this episode, we see dead Ted Raimi, his face still in that stupid position as he's in this giant chess piece, and there's a bunch of guys, and they're picking it up and carrying it into the ambulance. And I don't know if you caught this, but there was some guy, oh my gosh, you're stepping on my foot, calm down. But there's another person there, an actor who's actually from White Collar. Trying to remember his name, but I can't. But he is one of the roadies, and we learned that Ted Raimi's name in this is Rusty Tomasi.
Mm-hmm.
And they were with a band. Their van had a blowout, so they ended up in Twin Peaks, and that's when they were greeted by a guy. This friend explains. And we know it's Wyndham Earl, but they obviously don't have a name to give. Rusty was let out into the woods, and this guy is just saying that he just wanted to get beer, and that's all. And we have Andy blubbering in the background like he was in the first season with anything that came close to death. Mm-hmm. But Dale makes an observation. He announces that Wyndham Earl is playing off the board. And I think it's a solid opening. It's a good mix of, okay, it's utterly goofy, but there is a sense of this is sad.
Yeah, for a dude bro Rusty that was just a convenient plot device that looked completely silly, like everything Wyndham Earl's done. There's one scene in here that we'll talk about shortly with Wyndham Earl where I went, you know what? If they kind of did it this way with Wyndham Earl early on, it would have been a lot better, because this guy's just a throwaway character, Rusty, we're talking about here. But it is what I think that made me think this, okay, I'm getting the vibe of season 1 here a little bit with this scene, is that, well, it's at night. We were promised death and destruction, mayhem, all that sort of stuff from Wyndham Earl. We've got nothing but dumbass stuff and really bad Leo things. But with Rusty dying here, at first, it almost, I went, wait a minute, what's he, I thought his face looked kind of funny in it, but when all, like you said, struggled to get the black pawn off the gazebo, I was like, oh, okay. But it actually felt a bit dark, a bit serious. And the one thing that I had a little bit of an issue with, because of how bad the episodes have been lately, is Cooper's spot on while he's interviewing Rusty's one of his bandmates there, the guy talking to him, giving him the info. Reminds me of that old hitchhiking thing, grass, ass, or pass, or whatever. He was the only one that walked off to get some beer. It's like, yeah, y'all know better. That's stupid. But hey, things are different in Northern California, Twin Peaks, especially back in the 80s where, whatever, it didn't have a sexual connotation to run off with an old man offering a young boy beer, but hey, whatever floats your boat, I guess. But the thing here is, while the kid's talking and he's given the information to Cooper, like you said, Andy's standing behind him and Andy starts crying. It doesn't overpower the scene, but it's shot and you go, you know what? at least this is consistent with Andy's character that we've known from the early episodes. He's a very sensitive individual. He's like overly empathic. He hasn't learned how to shut that off. Some people are the opposite way. So you could argue it's a form of psychosis or character flaw or whatever, but that's who he is. So I don't know if that was meant to be funny, but I just thought with the music playing and all that, it definitely did not seem like, you know, like it was a joke scene or whatever. And then, like you said, when they're getting ready to go into the office, this thing's moving immediately. I liked in this episode some details that come up to me that are pretty apparent in some scenes. And they immediately are going back to the old drawing board, literally, with Briggs in the office. And everyone says hi to Lucy. She says hello, and she seems like she's back to herself. Andy walks by, doesn't say two words to her. And then she calls him, and he goes up, and he seems happy that she's calling. And regardless of the small talk they have and how it's may or may not be related to another theme in this movie, it's probably hopefully going to be the end of their storyline where she says, oh, tomorrow I'm going to reveal the father of my child, you know, out of one of you two or whatever. I'm going to pick one. And I just thought, I hated this whole storyline, but I'm glad they went this way because hopefully it's going to be an end of it, even though there's only 2 more episodes after this for season 2. But she's back to being who she was. Whenever she went down the whole baby angle, when they gave her something like that to do, I thought was really kind of silly. And it just was not funny at all. And it really dragged these B-level characters down a lot. And I know it's supposed to give them something to do, but I liked how Andy handled it. I was like, wow, wait a minute. We're seeing a little more thought and care put into some of the characters that we have. There's not much more to this scene here because we're going to kind of come back to it, but there's a nice little transition shot of the next morning when we knew it was at night of the lodge outside. And we've talked about how some episodes we don't see that. You were going to say something?
Yeah, I'm going to say this is where we're going to disagree again because this is back to season 1 me. This is ridiculous. She's dragged them all through. Well, I'm going to have to say it, bullshit. And now she announces, okay, I'm going to pick the father in 24 hours. Who's going to be the father of my baby? But she doesn't know who the father of her baby is.
She may or may not. She may be bluffing the whole time. She may not even be pregnant, but she's playing the baby daddy thing, and that was the angle that was given to her. And I agree with you, actually. I'm just simply saying I'm happy this is going to end, and I'm glad they're treating the characters as we knew them from season 1. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, but on top of that, she announces she's going to compete in Miss Twin Peaks. I'm not saying Lucy is a lovely girl. Okay, she is definitely not like Nadine, but she's not going to. Well, what does she think she's doing going for Miss Twin Peaks? That's utterly ridiculous.
Simply vote money.
It's just putting her in so that way every woman is competing for Miss Twin Peaks.
I don't disagree. I mean, it is absurd, but some of the absurd stuff, this whole show is absurd. So I kind of ignored that because I'm like, they've been stringing out the Miss Twin Peaks thing for a while. So we'll see what happens with that. But we'll come back to that, I believe, here. Yeah, the next scene shows a Billy Zane rocking, looks like some really nice corduroy pants. He's in a hurry. He has to leave. Something happened. But while he's there in the hotel, and again, we don't see this particular shot of the hotel a bit, and some of these scenes, I think they're modernizing. Like you can see like a tiny little, it's an Apple IIc or Mac Mini. That might be too early for that, early 90s, but it's just interesting to go, well, here's a little bit more of what we've come to know as Twin Peaks. When we get the occasional new shot of the town and some of the old ones, indoor and outdoor shots, it feels like we're in Twin Peaks rather than just a TV episode saying they're Twin Peaks. So he's obviously looking for Audrey. Can't seem to find her. But that scene's cut in with a scene of Ben getting checked out by the doctor.
With him half naked right there. He's definitely
it looks like he's doing a physical or something like that. Yeah. Well, the interesting thing to me, I forgot about how things were is back in the day, you could still have the occasional family doctor come do visits to you. It's not the other way around where you are in an HMO if you even have health insurance. And you know, just the relationship was totally different. And so part of me felt really old watching this going, oh yeah, this looks just totally plausible. And it's an interesting conversation they have, because we said Ben's really great when he's plotting and scheming it. Now that he's finally out of his psychosis, he's doing it, but he's doing it under the guise of trying to make amends for things of before. And what I like about this scene too is they're addressing the immediate thing there, that it appears that Ben's probably the father of Donna, rather than Donna's parents. And the husband here of Donna is trying to basically say to him, don't, you're going to mess things up. It's not a good thing to do. And that's probably the wisdom of the ages setting in here. But Ben, whether we know he's sincere or not, because he needs to earn that from us, he does a really good job of communicating with them that that's, you know, something he just can't do. And he feels strongly compelled to do it. And the doctor seems to understand it. And it's not really an argument. It's just communication between adults. And of course, Billy Zane comes in and basically says, hey, you know, give this letter. I'm flying away. I don't know when I'll be back. I have to go. And I think it's a good scene.
No, I agree. And when he's saying he has to go, a couple other things are going on here, because Donna is cut in and she's looking for her birth certificate. She finds it, but the father's name is blank. So this information is all, we know what they're implying. But it quickly cuts back to the hotel because Audrey arrives, even though Jack is in the office, and it looks like, okay, they might have their goodbye. But that's when Hawk comes in to whisk her away to the sheriff's station because Dale's asking for her, and she goes.
Yeah, all we need is a minute of Hawk or two, and we feel like he's made an impact. I mean, so I do like this too. And,
yeah,
you know, a lot of these scenes are cut pretty quick. It gives you that sense that it's happening real time pretty fast, and it is.
Yeah, there's also one other thing with the goodbye that we should mention. And I think it actually does have some emotional tugging there. I know you don't feel anything between Audrey and Billy, but between Ben and Billy, there's definitely that bond that they have. And Ben is saying that once Jack goes, this might all fall apart. Him being good, it probably won't last. But Jack assures him, just remember what I told you. And I'm sure you can still stick to it.
We'll see. I mean, he's made a big impact for the little amount of time he's been here. I, of course, could say Billy Zane. His name's Jack, but, you know, you wondered what he was going to be involved in, how roguish he was going to be, and if he was going to be doing the evil work of Ben while Ben plays nice guy. Who knows? Yep. Maybe something might still happen.
So this next scene, do you love it or do you hate it?
Garland Briggs, what do you think? I love it.
I think you like it. I know you love Briggs, but it's about a certain subject. So I'm not sure.
Let me go first then, and then we'll see what your thoughts were. I love Garland Briggs in here. I always said the way he talks is a bit different. It made me think that he's such a powerful figure. You could not necessarily have the show run around him, but he's one of those guys that to me is almost like a scene stealer with the way he delivers it. He gives you that sense of urgency of the evil that's out there. He's like the vessel that communicates that effectively rather than the implication that we get by some of the stuff that Cooper over the seasons has maybe thought about or considered through a philosophical existential sort of point of view. Briggs is like, no, we're the military. We're looking at deep shit stuff here, guys. And this is a big deal. And depending on how you are, I can maybe talk about it. Now, they take this to a level that may or may not be silly about these so-called evil sorcerers, Dugpas they're called, which I don't know if that's legit or not or what. But what I liked about how they did this here is they're watching an old tape that Major Briggs got up with Project Blue Book. And it's got Wyndham Earl in there because he said Wyndham Earl was starting to go insane. He was going a little crazy. He was the lead on this. And they have videotape of him saying it. And I've got to say this about Wyndham Earl. Whoever plays him, I don't know what else he's done. I've given him a lot of crap for the way he's been written in. I felt like he's been a joke. For all the silly stuff that we've had to endure in season 2 and how horrible a lot of it's been, I think he was the weakest part. I thought if we had a better written Wyndham Earl in the way he was presented. It would have elevated everybody, which is the whole point in having a bad guy. But seeing this little ghostly image on black and white of his face kind of talking about stuff is a fantastic delivery. His tone of voice, the way he talks is really, really good. I'm thinking this guy's probably a better voice actor than a character actor on TV. He just commanded that kind of presence. And for me, as silly as what the scene might normally be considered, like through today's TV and stuff, back then this was the type of scene that we didn't have a lot of on television and movies necessarily. So the idea of delivering it this way was somewhat fresh, and it's one of those great examples of show me, tell me what's going on. I don't want him doing stupid stuff with Leo and talking about all this kind of crap, looking like a college reject professor guy that I can't take seriously no matter how much everybody tells me about it. Show me him slowly going insane and being smart about stuff like that and people's reaction to it as they're all sitting around watching the video. That's going to do a lot more for character development than the crap they've done over this entire season. So it's amazing to me they were almost able to resuscitate what was supposed to be something evil. Because remember, we have not seen Bob since what, the first couple episodes or whatever it's been, the 6 or 7 or 3 or whatever it was, it was revealed. So things have been on the down low when it comes to the evil that's out there somewhere in Twin Peaks, whether it's the forest, the trees, the town, Indian burial grounds, who knows? We have this map we have to figure out. But we have something that's getting looked for, which thankfully all this ties in this episode. I'm taking a lot of time to explain it, but I think this is one of the best scenes in this whole episode.
I absolutely agree. And, I think it also has an impact on the following scenes.
Yep.
Quickly, we cut through, we zoom in on the bonsai tree that's there that was supposedly sent by Josie when it wasn't. It's actually Wyndham Earl's listening device. He's listening and he's just laughing. And there's something different in his delivery, I feel anyway. And he's talking about how he knows something they don't. And he talks to Leo and says, well, if Major Briggs, because he announces he's going for a walk, if Major Briggs is going for a little walk, why don't we join him? And as he's having his little moment, Leo sneaks the button into his pocket.
Yes, he does.
And that's when Wyndham is like, Leo, come on. But that's a quick scene. We cut quickly to a lady eating Jell-O. Yes. No,
not Jell-O.
Oh, it's not gelatin?
Well, what do we drink in Twin Peaks?
We drink coffee.
What kind of coffee?
Black coffee. Right.
I'm not trying to be. I'm being serious here. What do we eat in Twin Peaks? Cherry pie. That's what it is.
Oh, it's cherry. It was cherry pie. I didn't realize that.
I thought it was just a transition scene because in the background we see Bobby and Shelley, and I'm like, who's this woman? It's not the log lady. It's nobody we see. But yeah, go ahead. Yeah, it was a nice little touch, I thought. There's a lot of little nice touches in here. Again, I felt like some effort was put in this episode.
Yeah, and as she's eating, suddenly her hand starts shaking. But we don't focus on that too long because quickly we do go to Bobby and Shelley in the background. And they're talking about the contest, but that's when Bobby says that, no, wait. I want to take a moment. And he realizes that he hasn't been around as much as he should have been because Shelley in the last episode was kissing, what's his name? Lynch, David Lynch. And he's saying that when I saw that, I realized that I need to be here. I need to be better because he loves her. And that's when Shelley gets the goo-goo eyes and they go in for a kiss. And that's when she's getting a call from Cooper.
So what did you think of the scene with Bobby real quick? Bobby and Shelley?
I think it was surprisingly mature for Bobby.
Mature is the exact word I was going to use. I was like, wow, this is done pretty good because she's like, well, I missed that. You've been kind of a jerk. And he's like, no, I love you. And what I went through now wearing suits and stuff, I realized that. It's like, hey, a good delivery, 1 or 2 scenes. It almost seems like that's accurate because it seemed like they weren't very close there at all. Yeah, I was thrown off because of the lady with her hand shaking, because they're drifting right to the table where they're at talking about it. So again, this episode, there's a lot of camera movement, a lot of things going on instead of a lot of static shots we've had, and it gives a sense of urgency, I think, to the episode too. But yeah, a lot's going on. I'm really liking it. I didn't really care for the mayor scene here
No.
with the sex pot Lana, but what is clarified to us is that they're not actually married, and that she hasn't put out basically yet, and she won't until she's whatever, the way she says it. And so I'm thinking, okay, so what's the whole point? I thought she was supposed to be a sex pot. We didn't know if there was going to be a spiritual thing behind it, just because Bob or something. That could have been interesting, because it falls into a woman's powers over a man, sexually speaking, and that whole dynamic. I thought that was an easy philosophical angle to go to if we're talking about the supernatural, which we haven't seen since Bob. And that's where, we've been focused on the characters more. That's okay. But I was like, oh, okay, but for once the mayor seemed like a bit of a wuss ass here rather than a hard ass that we've kind of known. So I wasn't sure. But then they quickly cut to another scene that's done very well, at least in terms of the way the characters are. You got the three beautiful ladies, Donna, Shelley, Audrey, sitting at a table with Cooper, and he's got the pieces of the different poem that was sent to each of them, and he talks about how everything's going and the way he delivers. He's basically a sense of urgency, saying, hey, I want you checking in a couple times a day because, da, 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 da. And they're all just sort of sitting there. And thankfully, they don't really read the poem or go through it. And he asks Shelley, do you recognize the handwriting? She goes, it's Leo's. And we know as a viewer, Leo's still around, and we think Leo might be coming to a senses. So it's like, holy crap, a bunch of stuff is now starting to happen, and everything's taking a step forward towards it. So not a bad scene. A quick one before they actually cut to Leo. And that's one thing the show's doing well. You talk about something, in this case with the ladies, about Leo, boom, you go to Leo. Whatever's going to happen here at the end of it, boom, they're going to cut to that. That's not something we've seen in several of the episodes here in season 2, but go ahead and take it from here.
Yeah, no, I mean, whenever they're going in the sheriff's station about it, I feel like it's familiar. It feels like we said at the beginning of this feels like Twin Peaks. The information is getting to all the characters, and we don't feel weighed down by it. But with the saw blade and cleaning of the table, that's when we see Leo, and he's hearing Windham Earl. And I actually noted that Earl has a deep delivery in this. It's not his kiddish kind of tone he's carried through various.
Yeah, he's not using his stage voice, his tenor voice, his call voice. He's speaking with the bottom of his diaphragm like he should. Yes. You're absolutely right. It's a very noticeable delivery. The way he's talking makes a huge difference.
Absolutely. And that's when Leo, he goes over and he sees Shelley on the card, because he has the cards all up. And Wyndham says that maybe she'll win because she is a lovely little thing. And when she wins, her prize will be that she dies, and maybe Leo would like to help with that. And Leo is having his no moment as he's like shaking his head. And that's when Leo pulls out the remote and points it at Windham Earl and presses it because he thinks he can shock Windham Earl. But that's when Leo ends up shocking himself to the floor because his mind is still damaged. So he knows that remote hurts him. He thought that remote could hurt Earl, but it didn't. And Windham Earl actually takes delight in it. He's mocking him almost as he goes over. And that's when the scene quickly ends.
Yeah, it is what it is. It may be not like a scene that we're going to talk about here in a moment, not that much, and I'll get to that in a second. But to me, the scene after this one where Audrey, she's back at the hotel, and then they show how her and Jack are like missing each other, and they have a conversation. Ben's not listening to her, and he's basically saying, hey, you could be like a spokesperson for the Ghostwood campaign that he's trying to do. And she's just like, tell me where Jack is. And he says, hey, he's gone, and here's a letter. And so she runs out. She's trying to chase him down, which is a little bit different. Usually the guy's chasing the woman down. So in essence, whatever's going to happen with them, they're doing it a little bit differently. The woman's chasing the guy. I just made note of that. It happens quick. But the real quick scene that I don't know if it felt out of place to me, because they're still in the hotel, and so you're seeing her leave, and so they're doing some business with it.
Yeah.
We get our fisherman Pete. He's checking out like the fireplace that what we were shown earlier in the episode. So automatically we're primed, even if we're not aware of it, to kind of do whatever. He thinks he sees Josie's face like above it or something. And I stopped and rewound it a few times because I'm going like, wait a minute, did he see it? Can I see it on the super high def Blu-ray thing I've got going on? And the answer is no. But she's like, oh, you got a car? And he's like, yeah. And it runs like a charm. And he just takes them and runs out. It's like, okay, I can buy that. I just was hopefully we would be done with Josie, and I don't know if we are now. That scares me.
So here's something you forgot to mention. Something very important that I feel needs discussed, because as Audrey is running out, that's not where the scene ends, because Ben is kneeling saying, Audrey, no, don't go. And it's just a split second, but suddenly he stops, he turns around as if someone was behind him. And that's when it cuts to the lobby. And we see Josie in the background. Josie, how much joy I take in your face, or whatever. And Audrey quickly pulls him away, and nobody makes a notice of these odd things happening. So it's not only with Pete, but Ben, something is happening there as well.
You know, yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, well, there's sometimes we get red herrings and extraneous stuff and stuff that's just put in to take us down a rabbit hole, and so I don't know if that's it. I don't disagree with you. I just literally ran it back and just was watching it, and I go, yeah, you see it, but I don't know that I hear anything. But yeah, he's in anguish. The door's closed. He's getting down on that. We hear like some music though, which is like ominous or whatever. So if we knew what that music was, we might be able to tell if it was associated with another scene or person, because it's not the typical like two tones that we get, the keyboard scene I always, or music I always talk about, or Audrey's theme, or the piano thing, or the jazz piece, or whatever. So I'm not sure if or what significance that have, but we'll find out.
Yeah. Quickly, we do go from there to Dale and Harry. They're trying to figure things out, and they tell Andy to call the major. And Dale goes. He's standing by the window in the station, and he's looking out, and he says that he's thinking about Andy. And Harry's saying, oh, well, you're really hooked. And as Dale is gushing, he finally stops. He's looking. That's when there's a surge in the music, and it's almost tinny. And Dale's hand starts to shake. He grabs it, quickly stops it, but it's just such an odd thing. Like with the lady earlier in the episode, something's happening.
It's not the caffeine shakes, though. Now that we've got two people doing like, uh-oh, what's going on? Did he have some pot? Because we didn't see it.
From there, quickly, we go to the major whistling, and he stops by a tree, and suddenly the spots on his neck are taking his attention. He goes ahead and grabs them. And this is ridiculous.
Yeah, I hated this. This is the worst thing in the episode. This really is horrible. I don't get it.
It's a costumed horse. There are two men in the horse, and he says, hello. Hello, Wilbur. I think that's what he exactly says. Isn't that supposed to be a reference to Mr. Ed?
It would be if there was a little diagram of a glue factory, but yeah.
But then he shoots him with a dart, and I think he actually makes a comment to Leo in this scene where he says, "You really found your place," because he's the horse's ass. But from there, that's pretty much the end of the scene as we see Jack getting on his plane. It looks like that's the end for him.
Well, going back to Cooper when he's there
At the diner.
no, when they're busy going over everything too. when they were actually taking a look at the petroglyph and trying to figure out what was going on. There's the moment there where he stops after his handshaking and he's talking a little bit about Annie, and Truman's like, "Oh, that's just love, you're lucky." But for a moment there, I thought we were going to get him bitching out, which I was sick to. But the fact that he doesn't, he just listens to Cooper. I was like, okay, hopefully we've turned the corner on this Josie stuff. But like I say, my confidence is starting to get shook a little bit because in this next scene, we know that Briggs does like to walk around. So even though our part of mind's going, no, that's stupid. We know that's what Wyndham Earle is as a watcher. Nobody else seems to. Even though beginning of this episode, the Dude Bro Surfer guys, told them that their van broke down on the side of the woods, and we didn't get which woods or what mile marker or anything where they might have looked for them that might have made sense. This totally pretty much got rid of everything positive I said about Wyndham earlier because it's such a dumbass scene. We didn't need that. It would have been better if it was just something else. I don't know what, but I don't get it, Wyndham Earle. You actually were somewhat menacing sounding this episode, and the video thing was cool, and then you do this stupid ass shit. And yeah, Jack's getting ready to leave on his custom plane. They're gassed up to Jack. I gotta go. I don't know if I'll ever be back. But
I'm leaving on a jet plane.
Yeah, I mentioned before that I don't dislike the actress Heather Graham at all, and she's a very attractive woman. I mentioned before how she might be more of a physical actress to me, where whatever, because I feel like she's saying her lines. There's no chemistry at all between these two, even though the scenes acted well. But the interesting thing about this scene that I wrote down, and I don't know why they did it this way, it was disturbing to me, wasn't the fact that they have zero chemistry. Instead of the camera focused on these two and then zooming in slowly, like you do with a lot of close-ups, especially getting ready for the kiss, and you see both people's face get closer. It starts on them, and then it slowly pulls back the entire time they're talking, and he's talking about going out on a date, and they have this weird little moment where they zoom after he accidentally knocks over some dishes on what looks like coffee or something syrupy dripping or whatever. I'm like, okay, I guess it's supposed to be ominous because ominous music's playing, but
Yeah,
there's a lot of those things on here. And then they
confusing.
quickly, well, that's what Twin Peaks is, and they've been void of that for a while. But the next scene is interesting. It's interesting for what they're trying to do, but it's the one character in here that I feel like they've gone completely away from it, and I'm not caring about. And you see Jack in the plane's on the strip getting ready to take off. She runs out of the truck with Pete, and she's like, "I love you." He's like, "I love you too," and all this kind of stuff. And she just says, "I'm a virgin." He's like, "Okay." She's like, she's basically like, "I want you to deflower me right now." And he takes her into there, and he's like, "Right now, I'm getting ready to leave." And she's like, "Well, it's your plane." And so I guess there's a sincerity and honestness about the fact that she overplayed her sexuality in earlier episodes in a sultry kind of way. I don't mind her being a virgin, but this might upset some people because of how they're making the man sound like he's all that women chase him, which makes sense here, but the way she was played, she was one of the catches in Twin Peaks. So I'm just not crazy about this or what's going on. I thought he was going to be involved in something sinister. He's just there for her, just like,
Yep.
Heather Graham's character's in there. So I'm like, eh. But the really curious thing about this is the way it ends before it transitions to another scene. And that's where you see Pete just standing outside getting a little sad or whatever, watching, young people in love. He realizes he's going to have to probably sit there in his truck for a little while they're knocking boots or whatever. He goes to wipe some tears from his eyes, and his hand starts shaking too.
Yep. And then he grabs it. He stops it. But something is going on. But speaking of things going on, we switch to a cabin. Major Briggs is there, and he is strung up and spread out as Wyndham Earle begins to shoot around Major Briggs with his crossbow. And the Major says he won't get answers. And Wyndham's like, "Oh, I realize that." He quickly stabs him with something to make him cooperate. And it seems to have almost immediate effect. Briggs starts to spill basic information. And then, finally, Wyndham Earle asks about the pentagraph. And it seems like he's rambling on a little bit. And he finally says something about Jupiter and Saturn. When they meet, they'll receive you. But that's when what he was stabbed with got to him, and he passes out.
When he passes out, though, he's babbling something, and we don't know what it is. I will sit there and say that the subtitles on my copy say speaking gibberish, right? However, we've seen where there's been some speaking when Cooper was in a red room back in season 1. So I'm like, uh-oh, is something going to happen with this there too? Yeah.
I didn't try reversing the clip, so I don't know.
I'm just saying. I wouldn't expect, if you're watching it, you wouldn't know that. You would just know that it sounds like something, but we don't know what. But we've had something like that. That's the thing about Twin Peaks. There's certain things you forget that happened, and then you're like, oh yeah, they did all that. Like for example, the next scene we have Catherine, and she's got the puzzle box. She's working on it with that Andrew guy, who kind of figures out some of it, but then just breaks it. And then there's like this. Then there's like a little smaller metal box in there. It looks like a small, not cylinder, but little chunk of almost like tin or something like that. We don't see anything with it, but it's just a quick scene, and it's just thrown in there. They could have thrown it in at pretty much any point as a transition. But this is when we see Cooper, and he's meeting Annie for their dance date that they made. And they're at the Roadhouse, which we haven't seen for a while. We've talked about, we've seen a lot of the diner, but not the Roadhouse. And, of course, Annie doesn't know how to dance, and basically you're just supposed to let the man lead, and the man is supposed to know how to do it. And she's basically saying, like, Audrey, she wants the bone. But before they can get down to, I guess, deciding how and when quickly they're going to bone or whatever, that wussy-ass mayor who looked really weak earlier with trying to sandbag the whole Twin Peaks thing gets up there and he starts to go talking. No one's really paying attention to him, and it's like slow music and all that too. She's going to enter Miss Twin Peaks. We see that. And Cooper's like listening to her and all that. And then we get something that we go, oh, it wouldn't be Twin Peaks if they didn't pull this card again. All of a sudden, we get the giant. Kind of, when the giant comes, everything seems to slow down, and he's just kind of like waving his hands frantically, like saying no. I mean, he's mouthing it, he's not really saying it or whatever.
The little image we have right here is exactly it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the scene to me is not her, obviously, it's the giant, but there was a nice little outside shot of the lake, I think, originally where Laura's body was originally found, where Catherine and Pete started off in episode 1 way back when, and it's like, oh, that's a reminder of what it's like. So I like how they're doing a bit more of these transition scenes here too, and we see the stage being constructed for Miss Twin Peaks as well here at the Roadhouse, where all this is occurring, because they've milked this Miss Twin Peaks out here, but we definitely know episode by episode it's going on and laser involved. So now with 2 episodes left, it's going to be a factor. But the giant thing, it's like, oh, okay. Cooper looks sufficiently shocked by it, and they didn't milk it like they didn't go too long the first time that happened. That really threw everybody off. And back in 90 or whenever this first came out, I will tell you that when people were talking about it, it was quite the big deal. What do you have to say about that scene?
We're back. Twin Peaks is back. But I'm not going to go into too much. You said all there is to know. Something is happening. The giant appearing makes it evident. But I want you to go ahead and take this next scene, because I'll wrap up. Okay.
Yeah. So right after that, they go to where Audrey gets, getting deflowered, comes off the plane several hours later. So it's probably a 2 or 3 nut, if you know what I'm saying. It's just, obviously they did it tastefully, or she just wanted to make sweet love and all that stuff. There's, it's not offensive or anything. I don't know if people in today's world have a sense of, some people can be, if they go, oh my God, women aren't like that, men aren't like that. It was what it was, and it is what it is. It's not really a big deal, because Pete, despite him being a bit of a buffoon and me getting frustrated with the way he puts up with Catherine, he's kind of sweet to her, because she's like, why does love have to do whatever? And he's like, but hey, you're basically a woman now, but there's nothing like a cure for a broken heart than, going fishing at night. So would you go with me? She's like, yeah. And she grabs him arm, which is always a classy move. Yeah. And he's not obviously sexualizing her and like that. He's just like being nice to her because he just wants companionship is the vibe I get. And he doesn't come across necessarily as needy, but he's just an older guy and he's going to spend some nice time with her. And really, what the hell else does he have to do? He's the one guy in this whole season, just off the top of my head, it's so apparent that you go, I wish there was more for him to do. It's not a big, long scene, but we do get a sense of finality with it too. But it really turns quickly from that with Briggs being shown on the floor, still kind of knocked out there with Wyndham Earl, and Wyndham Earl's discovering that the stuff it's a clock with the whole symbol stuff, and he has the mapping. He's using his computer, cutting edge at the time, and realizes it as he puts an overlay over it over the city of Twin Peaks, that familiar little drawing we've seen a couple times in the police station's background on the chalkboard where they've always left up. I've always liked that. So we're not quite 100% sure where it's going to be, but you see some of these symbols and you go, okay, the petroglyph thing, you lay it on top of here. This is going to tell me where the entrance to the Black Lodge is, because there's this big thing about the Black Lodge with it being a gateway to evil, because that's what these old evil sorcerers did. And if you could find it, that would be there. And then you get about a minute's worth of probably, the best collection of all the transition shots we've had in all the episodes of Twin Peaks. You get the owls, you get the trees, you get the wind blowing through them, you get a dark little circle too, and then you get a spotlight, which is where I think you want to end up.
Yeah, because after we go to the pictograph and we're taken to the woods, we see a light appear in the distance, and it's like a spotlight, and out of it comes a hand. And
it's almost like a mime show, though. Yeah. It's so goofy looking, but it's cool, and we know what the denim long sleeve means.
Yeah, Bob appears once again, and as he's out in his full form below in a puddle, it's not the woods anymore. It changes. Jazz starts playing, and we can see the red curtain. The red room is not far.
Yeah.
It's a good scene. It's really great.
Yeah, so basically, I think we both agreed that we liked the episode a lot. I think you think it was great. I think it was very good with some great scenes in there. I can't really pick on it too hard, or I'm not going to, because like I say, not all your episodes are going to be great. We know that. Season 2, we've talked about before how the studio basically played their hand with it and forced some things happening, which has led to its demise, along with episodes being pushed off because of, I think, war in Afghanistan at the time or whatever, Desert Storm, Desert Shield, and all that, switching time slots. So it was doomed. It wasn't going to get picked up. But with Lynch coming back in these past few episodes, I'm curious as if this was the episode you said, all right, let me stick my hand in here and get this thing to finish up so nobody thinks something that I created ends up being a piece of crap. I give him credit for that. Sometimes we give ego a bad rap in Hollywood, and for the most part, that's usually pretty accurate. But for here, I'm really liking the episode. Think it's working out pretty well. Sometimes in the middle you get a shit sandwich, but that first bite, last bite are the best. And so hopefully it'll finish strong, because at this time, there probably really wasn't going to be any more Twin Peaks. And obviously it would be about a year or so later that Lynch basically cleansed his palate of how horrible he was treated in his first real big venture in a television with this artsy show by making the movie Fire Walk With Me, detailing the nights of Laura Palmer's murder, which is almost like a prequel in a way, which at the time people hated this season 2 so much that even though it finished strong, and that's all I'm going to say, is that there wasn't necessarily a lot of interest in the movie when it came out. It was past its time, and grunge was starting to be a big thing. It was a big, huge culture shift. The 80s were dead for all intents and purposes. So your final thoughts on this episode?
Overall, there are scenes that I would pick on, but mostly that's my bias against Lucy and Andy. But overall, this was a great episode. And I think with our last two, we are going, I do feel that strong finish coming. We're going to have to wait and see.
Yeah, sounds good. All right, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Season 2, episode 20 of Twin Peaks. Great TV show. It's starting to build up for a very, hopefully, strong finish here. Can't wait to finish that up, talk about the movie, and then get into season 3 as we continue our journey down this interesting path. Again, Professor Pixel, being the young 20-something millennials, never seen this, doesn't know anything about it. It's a first watch. It's basically a first rewatch for me. I've not watched it in 30 years since it aired. So pretty interesting covering it. You got any comments, suggestions, thoughts about what you'd like us to cover on it? Let me know. Let us know. We'd be glad to take care of them. For Professor Pixel, myself, everybody involved here at the Xtreme Movie Show, have a good night, and as always, stay extreme.